One morning, I stepped outside and saw a deep trench cutting across my land, muddy water rushing through it like a river that wasn't supposed to exist. No warning, no permission, just a message from the HOA saying it's approved. But what they didn't know was that this one decision would come back to them in a way they could never forget. Because a few days later, that same water would turn around and head straight back into their streets. And when it did, no one was ready for what happened next. If you think you know how this ends, trust me, you don't. Make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel. And before we go further, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I always love seeing how far these stories reach. I still remember the exact moment everything started to feel wrong. The morning was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that makes you stop walking and just listen. I was standing on my land, holding a cup of coffee, looking down at the lower side of my property where the grass should have been green and flat. But it wasn't. There was a long, ugly cut in the ground, fresh soil, wet mud, and a line of water slowly moving through it. A drain. Not a small one. Not something natural. This was a deep trench, wide enough for a man to stand inside. It ran straight across my land, like someone had taken a knife and sliced through everything my family had built. I didn't move for a few seconds. My brain was trying to understand what I was looking at. Then it hit me. Someone had built this. On my land. Without asking. Without telling me. I walked closer, slow steps, boots sinking into the soft mud. The smell hit me first. Wet dirt mixed with something else, something dirty. Not clean rainwater. This was runoff. Street water. Maybe even worse. I followed the trench with my eyes. It came from uphill. From the direction of the neighborhood. From the HOA. I put the coffee down on a rock and crouched near the edge. The water was moving steady. Not fast, but constant. This wasn't from last night's rain. This was a system. Something planned. Something permanent. And suddenly, all the small problems from the past few months started connecting in my head. The letters. The warnings. The friendly notices. The HOA had been pushing hard lately. Complaining about my land, my trees, my fence. Saying things like drainage concerns and community safety. At the time, I ignored most of it. My property was older than their entire neighborhood. My grandfather bought this land long before their houses even existed. But now I was standing in the middle of their solution. They didn't fix their problem. They moved it. Onto me. I stood up slowly, my hands covered in mud now, and looked uphill again. Through the trees, I could see the edge of their clean streets. Neat sidewalks. Perfect lawns. Everything looked organized up there. Too organized. Because all their dirty water was coming here. To me. I felt that heat in my chest. Not anger yet. Something colder. Something sharper. Disrespect. That's what this was. They didn't just ignore me. They erased me. I pulled out my phone and started recording. No rush. No panic. Just steady. I walked along the trench, filming every inch. The entry point where the pipe came out from their side. The direction of the flow. The depth. Every detail. If there's one thing I've learned in life, it's this. When someone crosses a line, you don't shout first. You document. The trench ran almost the full length of my lower field. It cut across the old path my grandfather used to walk every morning. I could still picture him there, hands behind his back, slow steps, checking the land like it was part of him. And now, a ditch full of someone else's problems ran right through it. I stopped at the lowest point where the water started spreading out. It wasn't draining properly. The soil here wasn't built for this kind of flow. It was already turning into a swamp. That meant something important. This wasn't just annoying. This was damage. Real damage. I zoomed in with my camera, capturing the way the water pooled, how it soaked into the ground, how it pushed dirt away. Over time, this would ruin the land. And they knew it. I stood there for a moment, just watching the water move. Then I smiled. Not because I was happy, but because I understood something they didn't. They thought this was the end of the problem. For me, this was just the beginning. I walked back up toward the main part of my property, wiping my hands on my jeans. My boots were heavy with mud, but my mind was clear now. Very clear. They had made a move. Now it was my turn. When I reached the top, I turned around one last time and looked at that trench cutting through my land. The water kept flowing, quiet, steady, like it belonged there. But it didn't. And soon, it wouldn't. I picked up my coffee again, now cold, took a sip anyway, and pulled out my phone. First call I made wasn't to the HOA. It wasn't to a neighbor. It wasn't even to a lawyer. It was to someone who understood land. Because before I say anything, before I confront anyone, I wanted to know exactly what they did, and exactly how bad it was going to be. Because if they thought they could just push their problem onto me, they had no idea what was coming next. When I reached my land the next morning, the first thing I noticed was the sound. Not birds, not wind. It was water. Fast, heavy water, moving through something man-made. That was wrong. This place never sounded like that. I stepped out of my truck and stood still for a few seconds. I just listened. The sound was coming from the lower side of my property, near the old tree line where my grandfather used to say, "Water always tells the truth if you listen." I started walking down the slope, slow, careful, my boots sinking a little into the soft ground. Then I saw it. A fresh trench cut straight across my land. Wide, deep, and ugly. The soil was still loose, dark, and wet. Someone had dug a drainage channel through my property. Not a small one. This was big, like something planned. Like something approved. Like something done with machines. And water was already running through it. I walked closer. The water was coming from the direction of the HOA, houses uphill. That meant one thing. They had a water problem, and instead of fixing it on their own land, they pushed it down into mine. I crouched near the trench and touched the edge. Fresh cut. Less than a day old. Tire marks were still visible nearby. Heavy equipment. Excavator maybe. This was not some small mistake. This was a full job. I felt something rise inside me. Not anger yet. Something colder. Something more controlled. I took out my phone and started recording. "Today is Tuesday, 9:12 a.m., I said calmly. "This is my property, and this trench has been cut without my permission. Water is being redirected here from uphill properties." I walked along the trench slowly, recording everything. The path, the direction, the depth, the water flow. Every detail. Because one thing I learned from the last situation in my life, never react first. Always document first. The trench led all the way to the far edge of my land, where it emptied into a natural dip. That dip used to hold a little rainwater, nothing serious. But now, with this new flow, it was filling fast. Too fast. I stood there and watched for a minute. The water level was rising already. If this continued, it would overflow and start spreading across my lower field. That field was where I planned to build a small shed next year. And now, it was turning into a swamp. I turned around and looked uphill. That's when I saw him, standing near the top, hands on hips, like he owned the mountain. Sterling Briggs. He didn't wave, didn't smile, just stood there watching me like he was waiting for a reaction. I didn't give him one. I just raised my phone slightly, made sure he saw I was recording, and then I turned my back and walked away. Because I already knew something important. If he wanted to fight, he already made his first mistake. Back at my truck, I sat inside for a minute and thought. Not fast, not emotional. Just clear thinking. They built a drain through my property, which means they accepted one thing without realizing it. They accepted responsibility for where the water goes. And that was everything. I drove down to the main road and made my first call. "Hey, it's me," I said. "I need you to come take a look at something. Today if possible." That was cold again. If there's one person I trust to understand land, water, and structure, it's him. He doesn't guess. He measures. By noon, he was there. We walked the trench together, slowly. Colt didn't say much at first. He just looked, measured steps, checked angles, looked at the slope of the land, watched the water flow carefully. Then he stood still and said, "This is bad." "For me?" I asked. He shook his head. "For them." I looked at him. "What do you mean?" He pointed up the slope. "They didn't design this. They just cut a path and hoped gravity would fix their problem." He walked to one side and kicked lightly at the trench wall. Soil fell in easily. No reinforcement. No lining. No control points. No exit planning. He looked back at me. "This water is not going to stay here." That sentence changed everything. I felt a small smile form, but I kept it inside. "Where will it go?" I asked. Colt pointed again, this time tracing an invisible line with his finger. Back up, around, and then down into their streets. I looked uphill again, thinking. "You're sure?" I asked. Colt nodded slowly. 100%. They made a shortcut. But water doesn't follow shortcuts. It follows pressure. He crouched and picked up a small stick, placing it in the moving water. We both watched as it moved quickly through the trench, then slowed, then started circling in one area where the slope flattened slightly. "See that?" he said. "That's already building pressure. Give it a strong rain, and this thing will overflow. And when it overflows? I asked. He stood up and dusted his hands. It's going to find its own path. I didn't say anything for a few seconds. Then I asked the most important question. Can it be guided? Colt looked at me carefully, not confused, just checking. You mean redirected? He asked. I nodded once. He smiled a little. Yeah, he said. It can. Silence sat between us for a moment. Not heavy silence. Focused silence. The kind where a plan starts forming. I pulled out my phone again and took more photos. Close shots. Wide shots. Water flow. Entry point. Exit point. Every detail. Then I turned to Colt. I don't want to touch anything yet, I said. Not until we do this right. He nodded. Good. Because once we move anything, they'll try to say we caused the problem. Exactly. We walked back up toward the truck, and halfway there, we saw Sterling again. This time, he came down a few steps toward us. You like the improvement? He called out. His voice had that same tone. Confident. Slightly mocking. I stopped, but I didn't get closer. That's on my land, I said calmly. He shrugged. It's drainage. Community need. Legal. I almost laughed, but I didn't. Show me the permit, I said. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he smiled. You don't understand how this works, he said. We make decisions for the good of the neighborhood. I nodded slowly. Not on my property, I replied. He stepped a little closer. You're part of this whether you like it or not, he said. That sentence again. Same mistake. I looked at him for a second, then said something simple. We'll see. And I walked away. No shouting. No argument. Because the truth is, I didn't need to fight him. He already built the problem. Now I just had to let it grow. That evening, I sat at a small table with my notes spread out. Photos. Measurements. Colt's quick sketches of the slope and flow direction. Everything pointed to one thing. This drain was not a solution. It was a ticking problem. And with the right move, it could become their problem again. I picked up my phone and made another call. Philippa, I said, we've got a new situation. She listened quietly as I explained everything. The trench, the water, the direction, the lack of permission. When I finished, she took a breath and said, do not touch anything yet. I won't, I said. Good, she continued. Because right now they are fully responsible. If we act too early, we lose that advantage. That was exactly what I needed to hear. So what do we do? I asked. Her answer was simple. We let them finish making the mistake. I leaned back in my chair and looked out the window toward the dark outline of the trees. The sound of water was still faintly there in the distance. Steady. Growing. Perfect. Because now, it wasn't just about land anymore. It was about timing. And timing was about to turn everything. I did not sleep much that night. My mind was full. Every small detail felt important now. The sound of water in that drain. The way it moved. The direction it flowed. The shape of the land. All of it mattered. Early next morning, I went back to the property. The air was cold and quiet. You could hear birds, but also something else, the slow, steady sound of water moving through that new drain. I stood there and watched it for a long time. The HOA did not just build a small pipe. They built a full drainage line. It started from their main street, ran down the slope, and ended right inside my land. They didn't even try to hide it. The pipe was big. Fresh soil around it. Heavy machine tracks still visible. It was clear. This was planned. They wanted to push all their rainwater onto my property. At first, I felt angry. But then something changed. I started thinking calm. Very calm. If water can come in, it can also go out. I walked the full length of the pipe. I followed it uphill toward the HOA street. I did not cross into their land. I stayed on my side, but I studied everything. The slope, the direction, the ground levels. Then I noticed something very important. The land above my property was higher. Much higher. Their streets sat above me. That means gravity was on their side, but it could also be used against them. Water always follows the easiest path. And right now, the easiest path was into my land. But what if I changed that path? I smiled a little. Not because I was happy, but because I saw a way. I took out my phone and called my old friend, Ethan. Ethan works in land grading and small construction. He knows soil, slope, and water better than anyone I know. He picked up and said, "What's going on, man?" I told him everything. The drain, the HOA, the damage. He stayed quiet for a few seconds, then said something simple. Water is not loyal. It goes where you tell it to go. That was it. That one line. I said, "Can I fix this without breaking the law?" He said, "If you stay on your land, yes. But you must be smart." I asked him to come and take a look. He agreed. By afternoon, Ethan arrived with his truck. He stepped out, looked at the land, and did not say anything for a full minute. Then he walked slowly around. He checked soil levels with a small tool. He followed the pipe. He looked uphill. Finally, he turned to me and said they made a big mistake. I asked, "What mistake?" He pointed to the pipe. "They gave you control." I didn't fully understand at first. So he explained. "The pipe ends on your land. That means once water comes here, it is your problem, but also your system. You can guide it. You can reshape it, as long as you don't go onto their land." My heart started beating faster. I said, "So I can redirect it?" He nodded slowly. "Yes. But not stupid. Not aggressive. Smart." We spent the next hour planning. No machines yet. No digging. Just planning. Ethan drew simple lines in the dirt using a stick. "Right now," he said, "water flows straight into your low field. That's why it floods. But your land has another slope, here." He pointed to the left side of my land. "There is a natural dip. If we guide water into that, it will move sideways." I asked, "Where will it go then?" He looked uphill again and smiled slightly. "Back." I stayed quiet. He continued, "Not directly. Not like a straight attack. But if we build a small channel, a soft redirect, the water will follow the land and slowly return toward the street side." I could see it in my mind now. Not blocking the water. Not stopping it. Just guiding it. That was the key. We were not going to fight the water. We were going to let it do the work. But we needed to be careful. Very careful. Ethan warned me, "If you do this wrong, they can blame you. They can say you caused damage. So we do it clean. Natural. Like it always existed." That made sense. No sudden walls. No illegal blocks. Just reshaping the ground. We made a plan in 3 steps. First, create a shallow channel on my land to move water away from the flooded area. Second, connect that channel to a natural slope line. Third, let gravity slowly carry water back toward the edge near the HOA street. No force. No pressure. Just flow. Before we did anything, I took more photos. More videos. I recorded everything again. The water level. The pipe. The damage. I even recorded Ethan explaining the current situation. Evidence first. Always. Then we started. No heavy machines. Just small tools. Shovels. Rakes. Simple equipment. We worked slow. Very slow. We started shaping the ground. Just a few inches deep. Making a path. A direction. Water started reacting almost immediately. It's strange, but water listens. You move soil a little, and it changes its mind. After about 1 hour, we saw the first change. The water that used to sit in one place started moving sideways. Not fast, but moving. I felt something in my chest. Not anger. Not stress. Control. For the first time since this started, I felt in control. Ethan kept adjusting the channel. "Not too deep," he said. "Keep it natural." We made it look like a small, natural stream. No sharp edges. No straight lines. Curves. Soft turns. Like it was always there. By late afternoon, the water had a clear path. It no longer flooded the center of my land. Instead, it moved slowly along the channel we created. And then something happened. The water reached the slope that pointed back toward the HOA side. Not directly to the pipe. Not exactly the same way. But toward their street area. I watched carefully. The water continued. Slow, steady, quiet. Ethan looked at me and said softly, "Now we wait." I asked, "Wait for what?" He said, "Rain." Because real test is not small flow. Real test is storm. Before leaving, Ethan gave me one more warning. Don't touch their land. Not even 1 inch. If you cross that line, everything becomes risky. I promised him I would stay within my boundary. That night, I checked the weather. Rain was coming. Heavy rain. The kind of rain that fills drains fast. I stood outside as the sky got darker. The air felt heavy. Wind started moving through the trees. I looked at the pipe again. For a moment, I thought about everything. The HOA. Mr. Collins. The notice. The disrespect. They thought I was weak. They thought I would accept it. They thought I had no answer. But now, things were different. Very different. The first drop of rain hit the ground. Then another. Then many. Within minutes, it was pouring. Water rushed through the pipe like a river. It hit my land fast. But this time it did not stay. It moved, straight into the channel, flowing exactly how we planned. Sideways, smooth, controlled. Then slowly, it started climbing the slope line. Back toward the upper edge. Back toward them. I stood there in the rain, watching everything. No shouting. No anger. Just watching. Water kept flowing. Stronger now. Faster. More pressure. And still it followed the path. My path. By midnight, the storm was at its peak. And I knew something was happening up there. Something they were not expecting. I didn't need to see it yet. I could feel it. Because water always finds the truth. And this time, the truth was going back. The rain did not stop all night. It was loud. Heavy. The kind of rain that makes you feel small. I stood near the edge of my porch, watching the dark, listening to the water move. The pipe was working hard. Water kept rushing out of it, strong and fast. But this time, my land was not drowning. The channel we made was doing its job. Water flowed into it, turned, and moved along the path we shaped. It did not stay. It did not spread. It moved like it had a purpose. I walked slowly along the channel with a flashlight. The light shook a little in my hand, not from fear, but from the energy of the moment. Everything we planned, it was working. I followed the water all the way to the slope. And then I saw it. The water was not stopping there. It was continuing, climbing slowly along the natural line, heading back toward the upper side, toward the HOA streets. I did not cheer. I did not smile big. I just stood there watching. Because this was not revenge. This was balance. They pushed water into my land, and now the land was pushing it back. By early morning, the rain slowed down. The sky turned gray. Fog sat low between the trees. Everything was wet, quiet, and heavy. I made coffee, but I did not sit. I got into my truck and drove slowly up toward the main road that leads into the HOA streets. As I got closer, I saw the first sign. Water, not small water. A lot of it. The side of the road was soaked. Puddles were large. And as I moved forward, I saw more. One of the streets had water running across it. Not deep, but strong enough to notice. I parked the truck and stepped out. People were outside, some standing in their driveways, some looking confused, some talking loudly. I walked a little closer, but stayed quiet. Then I saw Mr. Collins. He was near the corner of the street, wearing a jacket, talking to two other men. His face looked different today. No smile, no control. Just stress. I stayed back, but I could hear parts of the conversation. Where is this water coming from? It wasn't like this before. The drain should take it down. Then one man said something that made me stop. It's coming back. Mr. Collins turned fast and said, that's not possible. But it was. Water that they pushed down had found its way back up through the slope and spread across their lower street edges. Not flooding houses, not yet, but enough to scare them. Enough to make them think. I slowly walked closer, acting calm. Mr. Collins saw me. Our eyes met for a second. I gave a small nod. Nothing more. He walked toward me. Fast steps. Tight face. What did you do? He asked. I stayed calm. I stayed on my land, I said. That's not what I asked, he said louder. I looked at the water, then back at him. You build a drain, I said. Water needs a path. He looked angry now. You redirected it, he said. I did not deny it. I guided it, I replied. There was a small silence. People around us were watching. Mr. Collins lowered his voice a little. You're causing damage, he said. I shook my head slowly. No, I stopped damage. He did not like that answer. You think this is a game, he said. I looked at him directly. No, I think this is exactly what happens when you don't ask before using someone's land. That hit him. Hard. He looked around. People were still watching. One of the residents walked closer and said, Collins, this started after that drain project. Another voice came from behind. Yeah, my driveway never had water like this. Now the pressure was not on me. It was on him. Mr. Collins tried to stay strong. This is temporary, he said. We will fix it. I nodded. Good, I said. You should. Then I turned and walked back to my truck. I did not stay for more talk. I did not argue. Because I knew this was just the beginning. That afternoon, more rain came. Not as strong as the night before, but enough. I stayed on my land and watched again. Water came from the pipe, followed the channel, moved along the path, and went back up. The system was working perfectly. Simple, natural, effective. Later in the day, I saw something new. Two trucks from the HOA arrived near the upper street. Workers stepped out. They were looking at the road, checking drains, talking to each other. Mr. Collins was there too, pointing, explaining. But I could see something clear. They were reacting, not planning. They did not expect this. They thought the problem was solved when they pushed water into my land. But problems don't disappear. They move. And now it was their turn. By evening, the street had more water. Still not a full flood, but enough to block parts of the road. Cars were moving slow. People were worried. I got a call from Ethan. He asked, "How is it looking?" I said, "It's going back." He stayed quiet for a second, then said, "Good. Just don't change anything now." I agreed. No more digging. No more adjusting, he said. Let it be natural. That was important, because now everything had to look like the land itself was doing this, not me. That night, I sat outside again. No anger in my heart, just calm. This was never about hurting them. It was about showing them. You can't take from someone and expect nothing in return. The next morning, things got more serious. I woke up early and heard sirens. Not loud, but clear. I drove up again. This time, the street was worse. Water had reached closer to some driveways. One house had water touching the edge of the garage. Residents were not calm anymore. They were upset. Voices were louder. Questions were stronger. And once again, all eyes were on Mr. Collins. He looked tired. Like he didn't sleep. Like he didn't have answers. I stayed at a distance. Watching. Learning. Because now, the story was not about me anymore. It was about consequences. And consequences don't need noise. They just need time. That morning felt different. Not loud, not fast, but heavy. Like something big was about to happen. I stayed on my land at first. I did not rush. I made coffee and stood outside, watching the sky. Clouds were still there. Not as dark as before, but still full. That meant more water could come at any time. The channel we made was still working. Water was flowing slowly now, not like last night. But it was steady. Calm. Controlled. Then my phone rang. It was a number I did not save, but I knew who it was. I picked up. "Hello. This is Mr. Collins," he said. His voice was not the same as before. No sharp edge. No power tone. Just tired. "We need to talk," he said. I stayed quiet for a second. "About what?" I asked. "You know what this is about," he replied. I looked out at the land. "I'm on my property," I said. "You can come here." There was a pause. Then he said, "I'll be there in 10 minutes. The call ended. I did not move. I did not prepare anything special. I just stood there and waited. 10 minutes later, his car came up the road. No fast driving. No sudden stop. Just slow. He stepped out, looked around, then walked toward me. For the first time, he did not look like the boss. He looked like a man with a problem. We stood a few feet apart. No handshake. No greeting. Just silence. Then he said, "This has gone too far." I answered, "It started too far." He took a deep breath. "We didn't expect this," he said. I nodded slowly. "I did," I replied. He looked at the ground for a second. Then he said something new. "We need to fix this before it gets worse." That was important, because he said we. Not you. Not I. We. That means he understood something now. I did not answer right away. I let the silence sit. Then I said, "What exactly do you want?" He looked up. "The water needs to stop coming back into the streets," he said. I nodded. "And what about my land?" I asked. Another pause. He knew this was the real question. "We can adjust the system," he said slowly. "Adjust." I repeated. "Yes," he said. "We can rework the drain." I stepped a little closer. "You mean remove it from my land?" He did not answer fast. "That will take time," he said. I smiled a little. "It didn't take time to build it," I replied. That hit him. Hard again. He rubbed his face for a second, then said, "Look, things moved fast. Maybe mistakes were made." That was the first time he said it. Mistakes. Not rules. Not authority. Mistakes. I crossed my arms. "Maybe," I said. He did not argue. "No," he said. "Mistakes were made." That was better, but still not enough. "Say it clear," I told him. He looked straight at me. "We should not have built that drain through your property without your permission." There it was. Simple. Honest. Finally, I nodded. "Good," I said. We stood there for a moment. Wind moved through the trees. Water still flowed quietly in the channel. Then he said, "So what do you want?" That question was important, because now I had control. Not loud control, real control. I thought for a few seconds. Then I spoke slowly. "First, you remove the drain from my land." He nodded. "Second, you restore my land back to how it was." He nodded again. "Third, you fix your water system without using my property." He stayed quiet, but then nodded. "And fourth," I added, "you put everything in writing." He looked at me carefully. "That's a lot," he said. I didn't react. "It's fair," I replied. He looked away, thinking. Then he said, "We can do most of that." I shook my head. "All of it," I said. Silence again. Longer this time. Then he asked, "And if we don't?" I looked at him directly. "Then the land keeps doing what it's doing." No threat. No loud voice. Just truth. He understood. He looked back toward the road, where the water problem was still growing. Then back at me. "Give me until tomorrow," he said. "For what?" I asked. "To speak with the board and come back with a full answer." I thought for a moment, then nodded. "Tomorrow," I said. He turned and walked back to his car. Before getting in, he stopped and said one last thing. "This could have been avoided." I answered, "Yes, it could." He left. I stayed, watching, thinking, feeling something strange. Not victory. Not yet. Just balance starting to return. The rest of the day was quiet. But the HOA area was not. I could hear distant noise. Cars moving. People talking. Some frustration in the air. By evening, I saw more activity. More trucks. More workers. But they were not fixing anything. They were just checking. Looking. Trying to understand. Because now the system they built was not working how they wanted. And fixing water is not easy. That night, I slept a little better. Not fully, but better. Next morning came fast. I woke up early again. Checked outside. The channel was still perfect. The land was dry where it should be dry. The water was moving clean. Then I saw a car coming again. Mr. Collins. But this time, he was not alone. 2 other people came with him. Members of the HOA board. They stepped out together. Serious faces. No smiles. No power attitude. They walked toward me. And I knew. This meeting would decide everything. The morning air felt heavy again, but not like before. This time it was not about rain. It was about decision. Mr. Collins walked toward me with 2 other people. A man and a woman. Both looked serious. No one was smiling. No one was acting like a boss. They stopped a few steps away from me. Mr. Collins spoke first. "These are board members," he said. "We came to talk." I nodded slowly. "Then talk," I said. The woman stepped forward first. Her name was Laura. Her voice was calm, but you could feel the pressure behind it. "We understand the situation now," she said, "and we agree that mistakes were made." I stayed quiet. The other man, David, spoke next. "The drain should not have been built on your property," he said. "That was wrong." Hearing it again, this time from others, made it more real. Not just one man admitting it. The whole board. Mr. Collins looked at me. "We discussed your terms," he said. I crossed my arms again. "And?" I asked. He took a small breath. "We are ready to agree, but we need to talk about how." I did not interrupt. He continued, "Removing the drain, we can do that. But it will take time. We need workers, machines, and a plan." I nodded slightly. "How much time?" I asked. David answered this time. 2 weeks, he said. I looked at him. "That's too long," I replied. He frowned a little. "This is not a small job," he said. I understood that. But I also knew something important. They were in a hurry now, not me. The problem started fast, I said. The solution should not be slow. They looked at each other. Laura spoke again. "What timeline do you want?" she asked. I thought for a moment. 1 week to start the removal, I said. Not finish, start. They stayed quiet. Then Mr. Collins nodded slowly. "That is possible," he said. "Good. Then I moved to the next point. My land must be restored," I said. Laura replied, "Yes. We will bring it back to its original condition." I looked at her carefully. "No shortcuts," I added. "No shortcuts," she repeated. Then I said the third point. "No water from your system will enter my land again." David spoke. "We will redesign the drainage system." I asked, "Without using my property?" He nodded. "Yes." Then came the last part. "Everything in writing," I said. Mr. Collins looked at me. "You will have a signed agreement," he said. I stayed quiet. Then I added something new. "One more thing." They all looked at me. The work will be monitored, I said. I will check everything. David looked slightly uncomfortable. You don't trust us? He asked. I looked at him directly. You didn't ask me before building, I replied. Trust is not automatic. He did not argue. He just nodded. That's fair, he said. There was a moment of silence. Then Laura took out a folder. We brought a draft agreement, she said. That surprised me a little. They were ready. She handed it to me. I opened it slowly. Simple words. Clear points. Remove the drain. Restore the land. Redesign system. No future use of my property. Timeline included. Signatures at the bottom. I read it carefully. Very carefully. No rush. No pressure. They waited. After a few minutes, I looked up. This is good, I said. Mr. Collins looked a little relieved. But, I added. He tensed again. We add one more line, I said. What line? Laura asked. If the work is not completed as agreed, you pay for all damages caused to my land. They looked at each other. This was new. David spoke first. That's a big responsibility, he said. I nodded. So was your decision, I replied. Silence again. Then Mr. Collins said something I did not expect. Add it. David looked at him. Are you sure? He asked. Mr. Collins nodded. Yes. Add it. Laura quickly wrote the line into the document. She handed it back to me. I read it again. Everything was clear now. Everything was balanced. I picked up a pen, signed, then passed it to them. Mr. Collins signed. Laura signed. David signed. It was done, but not finished. Because paper is one thing, action is another. Mr. Collins looked at me and said, we will begin in a few days. I nodded. I'll be here, I replied. They turned to leave. But before walking away, Mr. Collins stopped again. He looked at the channel, then at the pipe, then back at me. I didn't think you would handle it like this, he said. I asked, like what? He paused. Calm, he said. I gave a small smile. Calm works better, I replied. He nodded once, then left. I stood there alone again, but things felt different now. Not tense, not heavy, just settled. The next few days were quiet. No arguments, no letters, no warnings, just waiting and watching. Then on the fourth day, the machines came. Big trucks, excavators, workers in safety gear. They started near the pipe, breaking the ground, removing sections, carefully, slowly. I stood nearby, observing everything. They did not touch anything outside their line. Good. They were careful now. Very careful. By the end of the day, part of the pipe was already gone. The water flow changed again. Less pressure, less force, more control. Every day, more progress. The channel I made still worked, but slowly it became less needed, because the source itself was being removed. 1 week later, the pipe was completely gone from my land. Just soil, fresh ground, clean. Then came the restoration. New soil, leveling, grass seeds, watering. Step by step, my land came back. Not perfect yet, but close. Very close. And for the first time since all this started, I felt peace. Not because I won, but because things were finally right. The machines kept coming for a few more days, but the feeling was not heavy anymore. It was different now. It felt like something broken was being fixed, step by step. Every morning, I walked the same path. From the edge of my porch, down toward the place where the pipe used to be. I watched closely. I did not rush them. I did not speak much. I just observed. The workers were careful. Much more careful than before. No loud jokes. No careless digging. Every move was slow and measured. They knew now this land was not theirs. On the third day of restoration, I saw something small but important. One worker stopped another and pointed at the ground. Not here, he said. Stay inside the line. I heard it clearly. That one line told me everything. Before, they crossed lines without thinking. Now they were afraid to even step near one. Respect had finally arrived, but it came after pressure. By the end of the week, the big machines left. The land looked almost like it used to. Fresh soil, soft grass starting to grow, no pipe, no damage. But something else had changed too. People from the HOA started coming by. Not many at once. 1 or 2 at a time. Some just stood at a distance and looked. Some walked closer. One older man came up and said, I heard what happened. I nodded. He looked around and said, they shouldn't have done that. I simply replied, no, they shouldn't. He gave a small nod and left. No drama. No big talk. Just truth. Another day, a woman came with her dog. She stopped near the edge of my land and said, "I'm sorry for what they did." That surprised me. I looked at her and said, "Thank you." She smiled softly and walked away. These small moments, they mattered. Because now, people were not just seeing land. They were seeing fairness. They were seeing limits. And they were learning. A few days later, I got another call. This time, it was not Mr. Collins. It was Laura. Her voice was calm, like always. "We want to meet again," she said. "About what?" I asked. "The future," she replied. That word future made me think. I agreed to meet. We chose a simple place. Not on my land. Not on theirs. A small open area near the road. When I arrived, Laura was there, and David too. Mr. Collins came a few minutes later. He looked different now. Less tension. Less pride. More quiet. We stood together, no rush. Laura spoke first. "The work is almost complete," she said. "We wanted to confirm everything is acceptable." I nodded. "It's good," I said. "Not perfect, but good." David said, "We will continue to improve the land over time." That was fair. Then Laura said something new. "We also want to make sure nothing like this happens again." I looked at her carefully. "How?" I asked. She opened a folder. "We are updating our HOA rules," she said. I stayed silent. She continued, "Any project that touches private property will now require written permission from the owner." That was important. Very important. David added, "And we are adding a rule that any land changes must be reviewed by an outside expert first." I nodded slowly. "Good," I said. Then Mr. Collins spoke. "We should have done that from the start," he said. No one argued. Because it was true. Laura looked at me again. "We also want to ask something," she said. I waited. "Would you be open to being part of future discussions when it comes to land planning near your property?" That surprised me. Before, they didn't even ask. Now they were inviting. I thought for a moment. Then I said, "If it's about respect, yes." She smiled slightly. "That's exactly what we want," she said. The conversation stayed calm after that. No tension. No fight. Just simple, clear words. Before leaving, Mr. Collins stayed behind for a moment. The others walked away first. He looked at me and said quietly, "I handled this wrong." I did not interrupt. He continued, "I thought I was protecting the community, but I was forcing control." That was honest. Very honest. I said, "Control without respect always breaks." He nodded. "I see that now," he replied. We stood in silence for a few seconds. Then he said, "Thank you for not making this worse." I looked at him. "I didn't want worse," I said. "I wanted right." He gave a small nod. Then he left. That was the last real conversation we had. After that, things became normal again. Quiet. Peaceful. The land healed more every day. Grass grew. Soil settled. Water found its natural path again. And the channel I made slowly disappeared. Rain came again a week later. Not as strong as before, but enough to test everything. I stood outside and watched. Water came from the hills. But this time, it never entered my land. The new system worked. Their system. Not mine. The way it should have been from the start. I felt something strong in that moment. Not pride. Not victory. Just clarity. Because sometimes you don't need to fight hard. You just need to stand firm. Let things move. Let truth show itself. And when it does, everything changes. The weeks after everything changed were quiet. Not the kind of quiet that feels empty, but the kind that feels earned. Every morning, I stepped outside and looked at my land. The same land that had been cut open, flooded, and disrespected was now calm again. The grass was growing back. Small at first. Thin lines of green pushing through fresh soil. But every day it got stronger. The ground had settled. No deep marks. No broken edges. Just smooth land again like it used to be. And the most important thing. No water. No forced flow. No pipe. No damage. Just natural rain, falling, soaking, and moving the way it should. I walked the same path again one morning, from my porch down to where the pipe used to end. I stopped there. Stood still. And for a moment I closed my eyes. Not because I was tired, but because I wanted to remember. How it felt when I first saw that pipe. How it felt when water flooded everything. How it felt when they thought I would do nothing. That memory stayed in my chest for a second, then slowly faded. Because that moment was over now. Completely over. Later that day, I noticed something new. A small sign near the edge of the HOA road. It was simple. White board. Black letters. Private property beyond this point. Do not enter without permission. I stood there and looked at it. A small thing, but a big meaning. Before, they didn't see boundaries. Now they were marking them. Not for me, for themselves. That same afternoon, I saw a few HOA members walking along the road. Not with tools. Not with plans. Just walking. Talking. Looking around. One of them pointed toward my land, then shook his head slowly. Not in anger. In understanding. That's when I realized something. This was not just about one pipe. This was about how people think. How they act when they feel power. And what happens when that power meets a boundary. A few days later, I got one last letter. Not a warning. Not a notice. A letter. It was from the HOA. Simple paper. Clean writing. I opened it and read. It said they officially closed the project. It confirmed that no part of their drainage system would ever use my land again. And at the bottom, there was one line that stood out. We regret the actions taken and the trouble caused. No excuses. No complicated words. Just regret. I folded the letter and kept it. Not as a trophy, but as a reminder. That even systems, even groups, even authority can be wrong. And when they are, they can also learn. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into normal life again. No more calls. No more meetings. No more tension. Just quiet mornings and simple days. One evening, I sat outside watching the sunset. The sky was soft orange. The trees moved slowly with the wind. Everything felt still. And in that stillness, I thought about everything that happened. I didn't win by shouting. I didn't win by fighting. I didn't win by forcing anything. I just stood firm. I stayed inside my line. I used what I had, my land, my thinking, my patience. And slowly everything shifted. That's the thing most people don't understand. You don't always need to push hard. Sometimes you just need to stop moving and let others feel the weight of what they did. Because when people face the result of their own actions, that's when real change happens. I looked out across the land again. Clean. Calm. Mine. Not because I fought for it loudly, but because I protected it quietly. A few days later, I saw Mr. Collins again. Not in a meeting. Not in a problem. Just passing by on the road. He slowed his car a little, looked at me, and gave a small nod. No words. No pride. Just a nod. I returned it. That was enough. Because some stories don't need big endings. They just need clear ones. And this one was clear. They built something they should not have. I did not destroy it. I just showed them where it leads. And when it came back to them, they understood. Not from my words, but from their own experience. And that is something no argument can ever replace. Now the land is quiet again. The water flows where it should. The lines are respected. And everything is back, not exactly the same, but better. Because now, everyone knows where the boundary is. And more importantly, why it matters. This story was never just about a drain or water or even land. It was about respect. When someone crosses a line without asking, they think nothing will happen. They think silence means weakness. But sometimes silence is just patience. I didn't fight loud. I didn't rush. I didn't break anything. I just stood on what was mine and let truth do its work. And in the end, things didn't change because I forced them. They changed because they had to. Because actions always come back, just like that water did. So if you ever face something like this, remember one thing. Stay calm. Stay smart. Stay inside your line. Because when you do that, you don't just protect what's yours. You make others respect it. If you enjoyed this story and want more real, powerful stories like this, make sure you subscribe to the channel and don't forget to like the video.